Hi guys, Cinematic Recapped here. Before we start, warning. Spoilers ahead. Today, I'm gonna explain an American science fiction disaster movie, called Moonfall. On June 12, 2011, astronauts Jacinda Fowler, Brian Harper, and newcomer Marcus are on a space shuttle mission to repair a satellite. After that, Harper notices a mysterious black swarm heading toward them out of nowhere. It then attacks the satellite, killing Marcus and incapacitating Fowler. Luckily, Harper manages to re-enter the shuttle to fly themselves back to Earth. Arriving on Earth, Harper tries to explain what really happened earlier in space. However, all his stories about the mysterious black swarm are dismissed by NASA. After 18 months of investigation, NASA has finally concluded that human error was the cause of the incident, as Harper's story remains widely disbelieved. On the other hand, Fowler, who was unconscious at the time of the incident, fails to defend him during the hearing. As a result, Harper is fired. Not only that, his wife, Brenda, also divorces him and chooses to move to New Jersey with their son, Sonny. 10 years later, a conspiracy theorist named K.C. Houseman secretly sneaks into the room of an astronomy lecturer at the University of California to gather information about the moon's orbital activity because he believes that the moon is an artificial megastructure. When he goes to his regular job at a fast food restaurant, Houseman finally gets an email containing information about unusual moon activity as its orbit is veering closer to Earth. Armed with this information, he immediately tries to notify NASA, but he ends up getting no response from them. Meanwhile, Fowler still works at NASA and living with his son, Jimmy, and his nanny, Michelle. At work, she is informed that the moon's orbit has shifted. In addition, they also discover strange gas emitted from the moon's hole. Since there is no response from NASA, Houseman collects all his findings and then attempts to share them to Harper, who is teaching on a class field trip at a museum. However, Harper dismisses him, thinking that he is a conspiracy theorist. Because of this, Houseman desperately throws all of his findings to Harper to read before he is taken out by the guards. Harper now lives alone in his house, while Brenda has remarried to Tom Lopez and has 2 daughters with him. That night, Harper gets a call from his ex-wife saying that their son has been arrested by the police for racing on the streets. The next day, Harper attempts to go to his bail hearing. However, he cannot control his emotions and continues to interrupt the judge's words. Therefore, the judge decides to postpone the trial for a week, which means that Sonny will automatically have to be in jail for another week. When Harper tries to bribe the judge to free Sonny from prison, news of the moon being out of orbit is now starting to go viral. It turns out that Houseman has made his findings public through social media. Meanwhile, NASA independently discovers the anomaly, and Fowler's crew estimate that they have about less than 3 weeks before the moon breaks apart and creates city-sized debris to rain down on Earth. At the same time, everyone panics about the news and starts asking NASA for clarification. Not wanting to cause chaos, NASA is forced to lie to the public and denies all the information. On the other side, NASA secretly arranges the launch of a space shuttle with a crew of 3 astronauts to the moon to investigate the abnormality. Soon, the same swarm that had attacked Harper's mission reappears and surrounds the shuttle, killing all the astronauts after they drop a probe into a 25 kilometers deep hole on the moon. This incident is also widely seen by NASA. Thus, chaos breaks out all over the world, with looting and rioting everywhere. People begins to evacuate and seek shelter. Brian, who also knows about the anomaly, decides to look for the findings previously given by Houseman in the dumpsters. He then visits Houseman to inquire about his theory about the anomaly of moon's orbit. As the moon's orbit continues to deteriorate, it falls closer to Earth and causes catastrophic disasters such as tsunamis, gravitational abnormalities, and atmospheric dissipation. Harper and Houseman are also the victims of the tsunami. After seeing what just happened on the moon, Fowler assumes that the mysterious swarm is artificial intelligence. Knowing this, NASA's director becomes very scared, so he decides to resign and save his family before anything bad happens. Thus, Fowler is now the deputy director of NASA. She then digs into the old NASA archives and finds the old footage of Harper during the first failed mission. After that, she is approached by an old man named Holden Field, a former NASA official who now works in the archives department. He implies that something bad happened during the Apollo 11 mission, which NASA has been hiding from the public for so long. It is revealed that Apollo 11 had discovered surface abnormalities on the moon during its landing, and that a 2-minute radio blackout was meant to conceal how the moon resonated strongly when the spacecraft's fuel tanks were jettisoned, revealing a hollow interior. Therefore, a military program codenamed ZX-7 had created an EMP device in an attempt to kill the swarm, but was abandoned for budgetary reasons. Soon, Fowler asks the military for help to kill the swarm on the moon, but the military instead agrees to kill the swarm using a nuclear bomb, as they do not know that their decision is actually very dangerous for mankind. Before that happens, the military evacuates all residents to take shelter in the bunker which has been prepared in Colorado. Fowler also sends Jimmy with Michelle to the bunker. After that, she contacts the Air Force Chief of Staff and ex-husband, General Doug Davidson, to stop the military plans because she believes they can kill the swarm without endangering many people. A few moments later, Harper and Casey are picked up by the military to be taken to NASA. When they arrive, Fowler shows them the footage of what had just happened on the moon. Therefore, she enlists Harper's help to kill the swarm. Fowler then orders the EMP to be brought out of storage and brings the retired Space Shuttle Endeavour out of its museum to serve the mission. But before the mission is set, Sony has been released from prison and taken to meet Harper at NASA's base. As another catastrophe continues, Fowler orders all her crew to save themselves first. However, the two NASA crew who are left behind find that Houseman's calculations of the moon's orbit are very accurate. Because of this, Houseman is invited to join their mission since he knows about megastructures more than they do. On the other hand, Harper tells Sony to go with Jimmy and Michelle to the bunker as they drive out of there. Harper, Houseman, and Fowler finally launch the shuttle with the EMP, just as a gravitational abnormality causes a massive tsunami that comes toward the city. Fortunately, they narrowly escape the tsunami, and so does Sonny's group. Not long after, they finally arrive at the space station and stop briefly to refuel the shuttle, but they cannot linger any longer as the moon draws closer to Earth. Back on Earth, Sonny bonds with Michelle and Jimmy on their drive to Colorado, while he speaks to Doug to assure him that Jimmy is safe. However, they are robbed later by a group of thieves, so they are forced to walk to the bunker. On their way, they are surprised by a meteor shower, which is the moon's debris being shattered into pieces. Thus, they struggle to avoid the meteor shower while holding from the moon's gravitational shift. The group eventually reaches Tom's place and reunites with Brenda, as well as her stepfamily. All of them has to go to the bunker immediately as the disaster is getting worse. In space, the trio finally arrives at the moon and drop a probe inside the hole to bait the swarm. Unexpectedly, they notice that the swarm does not want to touch the probe, but instead begins to attack their shuttle. Luckily, Harper immediately disables their electronics upon realizing that the swarm is attracted to the technology. When the crew enters the moon's interior with the shuttle's engines off, they finally realize that all the conspiracy theories which Houseman believed in are true. It turns out that the moon is a megastructure and the swarm is siphoning off energy generated by a white dwarf at the center of the moon. After that, they launch another probe after seeing the swarm, but this time, their shuttle suddenly flies on its own, causing them to lose control. The group is brought into a room at breakneck speed, rendering them all unconscious. Shortly after, Fowler and Houseman wake up, but strangely they cannot find Harper. When they get out of the shuttle, they are very surprised because the gravity there is the same as on Earth. Fowler believes that there are two separate entities on the moon, and one of them is trying to help them. On the other side, Harper encounters the moon's operating system, which takes the form of little Sonny speaking to him. He learns that the megastructure was constructed by the ancestors of humanity, who were more technologically advanced than their present-day descendants. They created artificial intelligence to help their daily lives. The moon was constructed billions of years in the past as an ark to repopulate humanity, but one day, it was being hunted by a rogue artificial intelligence that grew too strong. The swarm in the moon is one of those AIs, which responds to electronic activity in the presence of organic life. Lastly, the operating system tells him that the AI can be defeated, but a human must stay behind to make it happen. After hearing all these explanations, Harper finally wakes up and explains everything to Fowler and Houseman, while rushing to do everything he can to save the moon. Back into the Earth, the thieves from before try to rob them again, but luckily, Sonny and Tom manage to restrain them with guns. As the group makes their way towards the bunker, the thieves chase after them. Furthermore, the moon's gravitational shift chunks of Earth's mass that break off the ground. They eventually reach a safe mountain tunnel after the thieves are killed by the deadly natural disasters. At that moment, the moon's gravitational pull strips the atmosphere of oxygen. Hence, everyone starts wearing oxygen masks while walking to the tunnel for safety. Unfortunately, Tom has to sacrifice himself to save his youngest daughter because her oxygen is running low. When she reaches her family, the oxygen starts to come back, so Sonny attempts to find Tom. However, he is knocked down by a falling tree pinning him down. At the same time, the President of the United States gives an order to launch a nuclear strike towards the moon. However, Doug refuses to carry out the nuclear strike order to save the lives of Fowler, as well as Harper and Houseman. Instead, he insists that he truly trusts his ex-wife and believes that she will save them all. Meanwhile, Harper conveys the idea that he will sacrifice himself to destroy the swarm using the EMP. However, his plan must fail when Houseman suddenly takes his place to sacrifice. Houseman feels that Harper has a family and is more worthy of living to continue his work as an astronaut, while he has a chance to do something great with his life by saving the Earth. Harper and Fowler say goodbye to Houseman, who ultimately entrusts his mother to Harper. He uses the EMP in the crew's lunar module to lure the swarm away from the shuttle before detonating the device. He then destroys the AI, killing himself and allowing Fowler and Harper to escape. With Houseman's sacrifice, the moon begins to return to its regular orbit, ending the destruction on Earth. Fowler and Harper also safely return to Earth and they are able to reunite with Sonny, Jimmy, Brenda, and Michelle. The movie ends with the moon's operating system, which is a benign AI, revealing that it has stored a copy of Houseman's consciousness. It appears to him as his mother, who cryptically states that they are about to start something big in the future. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.